Today on the show, strategy plus action equals the power of connecting authentically. Success in business and life is a constant back and forth of charting your course and taking the consistent steps every day to move you forward. Both are critical. My guests on this show range from hardworking entrepreneurs starting from scratch to visionary leaders of cutting-edge companies looking to scale. I help you understand the strategies that are working for them and the actions you can take to model their success. For me, a show like this is all about joining forces with my guests to dig deep and create something new for you. Whether that's a small insight that gets you unstuck or a path of massive growth through customized marketing and creative sales initiatives. Welcome to Strategy in Action. Welcome to episode 37 of Strategy in Action. Steve Spiro is on the show today, and we dig into one of my favorite topics in the world, which is connecting. And, you know, we both use this term very purposefully, strategically, because it goes far beyond what a lot of folks would kind of lump into a pile of networking, you know, meeting new people, growing your business that way, et cetera, right? And that's a layer of it. There's part of that. For us, networking is not a four-letter word, that some people just like, oh my gosh, that's the idea of it. And they have this picture of going into a horrible Chamber of Commerce meeting or something like that they're forced into, and it's awful. We don't have that connotation, but we understand that a lot of people do. And the other reason for the term, though, is that it goes deeper than that. It's not just meeting somebody and maybe you'll do business together one day. It's really leading with the fact that my goal is to connect with this other person, right? Learn their story, dig in, see what they're all about. And then, maybe there's business to be done, or I know someone who needs their service or whatever that might be, but it's that connection first. And then specifically, we really talk about this concept of connecting authentically, and we dig in deep of what that actually means, but we go through it because it's one thing to have your intention be that connection that I just described, but it's a completely different thing for the other person to feel it. And there's some things that go into it that may seem counterintuitive, that may seem like, oh, I shouldn't have to think about that. That's just being a human. But a lot of times there are very purposeful things that we need to do to make sure that the other person feels that intent that we have. So I encourage you to, dig in deep with this. And if you have that negative connotation of maybe networking or things like this, hopefully this gives you a different perspective on that, and will help ease those fears or the anxiety around it maybe. All right, let's dive in. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am so excited. We are here with Steve Spiro. Steve, how is it going?
It's doing tremendous, Jason. Doing really well. How about yourself?
Oh, just wonderful day. I really wanted to have you on this episode talking about connecting, but really specifically what, you really have that intimate knowledge with is connecting authentically, right? And I think not only do you have experience in that area, but you've made it such a purposeful focus of your life that you'd be perfect to jump in and talk about it. It's certainly one of my favorite topics and focuses in life. Before we even dig into that, though, I want, around the topic of connecting, but also just everything you have going on, because it's a lot right now. What do you have going on, and how does connecting kind of fit into that?
Well, I appreciate that. And first I want to say it's an honor and a real privilege to be on your show. And I'm, a big admirer of what your work and what you do. And I really am grateful to be on with you. So thank you again for the opportunity. It's funny, those who maybe have not heard me before, I'm known as the master connector. And just to kind of preface that, I've always had a lot going on in my life. I was, giant introverted, picked on, bullied, learning disabled, dyslexic guy as a kid. Wound up eventually going into advertising. Eventually, my dad had a liquor store. He was a business owner. So entrepreneurship was always in my blood. but he dissuaded me from going into that industry, and I wound up going into advertising marketing. Went to high school for that, college for that. Couldn't get a job out of college to start a company. Did that for a lot of years. Had an illustrious career in that industry. Wound up, eventually getting introduced to a successful entrepreneur who really was a game changer in my life, and took me under his wing, took on a mentoring role, and kind of got me on this path of self-development, books and audios and networking. And when the economy shifted, I was ready to pivot, and I wound up getting into technology, and then eventually into consulting, which is one of the things I do. I'm a business automation consultant, so that's kind of what I do during the day. In and around all that, I do some other things. I've got a LinkedIn live show called the Master Connector Show. I do some speaking, and I've got some other entrepreneurial projects. And so, people find what I do often a conundrum. And, when you do a lot of networking like I've done over the years, I have 17,000 contacts on my phone, 16,000 LinkedIn connections. And for some people like you, Jason, I'm sure that's not a lot. But for most people, when they ask you what you do, they want to put you in a cute little box. He's an attorney, she's a CPA, et cetera. And I don't fit in that cute box. And when people would ask me what I do and I would tell them, I'd hear back, I don't get it. I'm like, just call me a Master Connector. And that name was sort of born. So, but yeah, so as far as what's kind of going on, the show has been going tremendous. We're having a lot of fun. We are now we're in season 2, shifted our broadcast to Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. We went with a half-hour format. We were doing multiple guests, 3 or 4 panelists. We've had some incredible people on. Dr. Dre was on our show. We had the author of the book, The Go-Giver, Bob Berg, was on our show, and some amazing guests. But now we're going to go focused on one single guest and keep it to a half hour. And so we're excited about that. We've got some sponsorships in the show. So it's really been a lot of fun. And we're actually leveraging the Master Connector brand, and we're doing some workshops. We've got a workshop lined up on June 7th and 8th. It's a Tuesday and a Wednesday afternoon Eastern Standard Time for 3 hours each day, and it's going to be a blast. And it's really been a fun run, doing the what I'm working with my co-host Cameron Toth. Cameron has been great. He's the founder of Toth Event Staffing, and he also has a show that he does called BizDev Live, which I was always impressed when I watched him do a show. So anyway, it's been a blast. Life's fun. Getting speaking gigs and just having a good time and getting on to talk with amazing people like you, Jason.
Well, I appreciate that, and it was a blast being a guest on your live show there in the past.
Yes,
and
you were one of those amazing people. That's correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, some people say the best episode ever. I don't know. That's just for other people to say. That's
I would agree with that.
The word on the street is best ever, but whatever. I love this focus on connecting, and I want to dig into for the audience and everything some principles around, especially doing it authentically and stuff. And I think we both have some of that we can kind of dig into. But even before going down there, since you've made connecting such an integral part of your just brand identity and human identity and all of that, where does it, because you talk about people being confused, let's say, like, okay, you're a connector. What does that mean? Right. I think one answer is, well, let them be confused, but the other question though, and I'd love to figure out an answer here, is how does it mean something in the business side of things? How does it relate beyond a tool for whatever else you're doing, which it's an invaluable tool for that, networking? You talk about being a networker and all of that. When you are standing there like, this is my main focus in life, some people could take the soft side of like, oh, connecting, they take that like, oh, cool, you meet and talk to people. Who cares? But I think I have my own answers for this. But what are your answers in terms of where's the substantive? Is that a word? Substantive? I can't say it if it is a word.
I know what you mean, though.
What's the meaty part of that? For folks.
Yeah, it's great. And, you know, I didn't call myself the master connector, the master networker. I called myself the master connector because I think there's a lot more to that, right? So connecting can mean, of course, you know, connecting with more people and having a large network, right? You know, large connections. So there's of course that piece of it. There's also how you could be a connector where, you know, you're able to leverage your network, your connections, and allow that to be an asset so you can make some introductions and help connect the dots with people, right? So there's that piece of it. But I think where I gravitate more on, besides those things, and those are definitely aspects of what being a connector, the master connector is true. But the other part is the connecting authentically part. And I think that's so important today, more now than ever before, in this new normal that we're living, right? Social media has become so important, and that's good and bad, right? But it's part of the fiber of our society today, right? Everything happens often on social media. It's how families seem to stay in touch through social media, you know. So and I think also we've seen, you know, cyberbullying, we've seen all these other things, but we've also seen people create, I think, a false perception of what they're about through social media, right? I think, you know, I see these, you know, and I'm not a big Instagram guy, but you see it a lot on Instagram, especially where, you know, somebody claims to be this, you know, PMA or business coach guru. They're just self-proclaimed and they put up some posts and now they're like this guru person, right? Or they, you know, they're probably broke by most standards, but they're showing their lifestyle as, you know, they're jet setters. They're going to, you know, to this exotic place and that. Meanwhile, it's probably just a week of their life, and they probably put themselves in $50,000 credit card debt to do it. But they want people to think they have this lifestyle, this persona, and meanwhile, it's not authentic. It's not who they truly are. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some value to kind of trying to create a brand and want to be, you know, grow into that. And being the master connector, there's been some of that for me. But I think on the social media side, it's how do you connect with your connections with your audience, et cetera, in your messaging, whether it be through video, when you're putting out video, whether you put out messaging, and it's being honest and authentic, and a la Brene Brown and how she talked about being vulnerable and all that, and just showing the human side of you rather than I'm this really cool, you know, great person, right? But show the other side of you, who you are, be human. And so connecting through social media in a more authentic way is one thing, because what I think what that does is it people are drawn to it. I think people are smart now and they know, okay, this person's not for real. You know, they want authentic. So if you're looking to attract the right audience and to attract people that might want to do business with you somehow, some way, being authentic is going to help you. The other side of being authentic, I find, is on video calls, right? At phone calls, but especially video calls. And how do you connect? And what's that look like? You know, are you, simple things like what's your background, how you dressed, are you looking in the person, in their eyes, right? I mean, right now I'm looking in the camera, so I'm appearing like I'm looking in your eyes, right? There's things you can do, right? You're making sure you're not distracted with, playing with your phone or whatever, or, there's another thing I see a lot, and I understand it, but people have multiple screens. Well, sometimes their camera is on one screen and the view of the person they're speaking to is on another. And so they're talking like this the whole time. And I'm thinking, who are you talking to? Talk to me, So it's how do you connect and really create a bond, and really get to know each other. And there's lots of things, and I've learned over the years. Listen, we all know this. This has been around since probably the beginning of time. The saying being, people like to do business with people who they know, like, and trust, right? So, the know, like, and trust part, if you're not connecting, especially authentically, there's going to be a barrier that's created, and you're not going to be able to get do the type of business you're looking to do. Again, I'm talking maybe in business, but also in relationships, right? And so it's that. And then, the other part of it is when you meet people out and about, living your life, which we're starting to do again more, thank God. How do you connect with somebody where you meet them for the first time out and about? and they're like, wow, that was a pretty cool dude. I'd like to stay in touch with this person and maybe somehow figure out a way that this person could be in my life. And do you have the ability to connect with somebody on that level, even if it was a chance quick meeting for 3, 4, 5 minutes? And how do you connect that way? And the tangibility that you're asking about, Jason, is, are you using connection to really grow relationships that perhaps could be more meaningful relationships, and or perhaps turn into business, right? Because, let's be honest, right? Often we have to earn a living, right? And so it's not always about, this foo feel good stuff. It has to relate to business as well sometimes. So learning how to connect authentically to be able to do that is super important.
Yeah, and it's a strange subject for some folks, because the idea of having to be purposeful in that, I think some people hear well, you need to be authentic, like, oh, I need to go manufacture how to be authentic. Like, that's not what we're saying, like, it's almost like listening, right? You can hear everything somebody is saying to you, but do they feel like you hear everything they're saying to you, right? And so part of this that you're describing is exactly that, in that connection and coming across authentic. There are some decisions you have to make in order to make sure that who you really are inside, deep, all your things, like, are coming out. And that doesn't just happen, right? In our everyday life, much less with new people, virtually, in person, all of that. And some people may look at that as tactics, but it's really just these purposeful decisions. And when those decisions are made from a place of, like, a bigger place of, here's my outcome, here's what I want to achieve, is, my true self coming out, really getting to know this person. And if I am going to go have this conversation with somebody I don't know tomorrow off of LinkedIn, man, that openness, just like, I'm just curious, I want to know what's going on. And yes, sometimes it'll lead to business. Sometimes it'll lead to an introduction of this. Sometimes it'll be like, oh man, I didn't know that restaurant existed. That's fantastic,
Right.
But I think there's something to just this humanness, even when it's virtual, right?
Right.
That I don't know, it's powerful, and the tools and the reason to have a conversation around it and put it in at the forefront of people's minds is to let people know that the people they maybe feel connected to, they've watched their stuff, or they've had a call and been like, wow, that was amazing. It doesn't just happen. They're not just like that. There's those decisions, like we said, that they've made to be that way and to come across that way, so that other person does get heard and make sure they felt heard and connected to. And I know that's a lot of, I'm sure what you kind of teach people to do, but certainly that you do in your everyday life.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I appreciate that. And yeah. I mean, certainly one of my signature talks, when I do speaking is on connecting authentically, because I think it's a very, very important topic. When you lead with about yourself, not just, well, tell me about yourself. Well, I do advertising, or I'm a speaker. Okay, great. And when I get that, when I have these introductory calls, these connecting calls, I say, and I'm very polite about it. I say, it's great, and we could do the what do you do dance, but I'd love to get to know you better. I'd like to hear. I'll give you my story. I'm happy to tell you a little bit about my background, but I'd love to hear the whole 9 yards. The born and raised, and sometimes when you open up and you show who you are, now people have a tendency to open up. And what I find happening often, I feel like it happened with you and me when we initially talked, Jason, is the kids get to talk. The adults are talking, but now the kids are getting to talk, and there's a kind of a bond going on, and it's beyond just, it becomes very human, like you said, and so it's super important. I think if you really want to excel in all realms, if you're a engineer or if you're a technician, and you're really talented, you'll go so far. But if you're a really good technician and really talented and you can deal with people, sky's the limit, right? So having those skills of really be able to connect and bond with somebody, it will take you
Yeah.
big places.
Yeah. And that's what I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think that's the other reason I'd love to put this topic at the forefront for folks is the same reason you didn't, you know, start going around the master networker, right? Master connector, because there is a distinction. There's a difference because it applies at such a broader, bigger level than networking. And especially, you know, I love the term, but there's plenty of people out here, as soon as they hear networking, right? Like that's just, they think of the horrible, meeting they have to go to and, for their business, and it's awful.
Almost to prostitution by younger folks. They think of it like they equate networking and prostitution almost in the same category, almost.
Right. And it's just like this negative connotation that hangs over it.
Sure.
But also, it's also because it applies much broader. Like you're saying, you ideally have a connection in so many different areas of your life, personal and business and everything. And
right.
Just, meeting the person at the store, that you happen to meet. Like you've had some of those stories that you've shared. They're just fantastic. But you made that purposeful decision that this is the kind of person I'm going to be, right? I made a decision years ago to be somebody who knows everybody, who is that connector. And I was the furthest thing in the world from that, right? But there was just something in there, just like, wow, just want to be that. And then as I've cultivated that and started doing shows like this, and it ignited even more and just fed it. I was like, oh, this is my oxygen, right?
Right.
And that may not ever ignite in someone to the level it does for you and I. But when you can recognize it as, that's a valuable skill. If I can relate to my son or daughter better, if I could relate to the guy in the cubicle better, then my life is probably going to be better as well.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's true. I mean, you talked about, you alluded to kind of getting outside of yourself and reaching out. And that's another one of my favorite topics, which it relates to some degree, which is kind of going from being sort of inward focused, self-focused, self-absorbed to others focused, being a go-giver. And I found, on the networking thing, right? We were in the middle of lockdown and the thick of COVID up in the Northeast. It was super lockdown. It was so much. It was, there was a tendency to feel kind of closed down. But when I was able to reach out and get onto networking, calls and get around, even though virtually around people, it felt better. I felt not as isolated. And when when I'm out and about now, and even during COVID, I'll just talk to people, because when I talk to people, and even though I'm shy, introverted, right? It's not my nature. When I talk to other people and I make that effort to really reach out and to make a connection, I feel better, right? There's a gut instinct that, at least for me, I just want to be inward, but I fight it every day and go outward focused. And when I do it, I feel better.
That's a great point too, because I'm not introverted. I love, like, it's oxygen for me to connect and talk to people, and I still don't do it enough, right? I still, in the past few months, have found myself, well, I got stuff to do, right? I'm head down, focused on stuff, just like, it's like exercising. Like we may or may not love it, but it's so good for us. And when we put ourselves through it and we do it, we're just like, yeah, I'm glad I did that, And that's such a strong distinction. So if you're someone who's not just like, I'm not doing that, but they don't know how, are there some first steps that you recommend for people to kind of get outside of that comfort zone, because they do see the value in connecting?
So just take a step. right? So if you're on social media and somebody wants to connect with you and have a conversation, have the stinking conversation. Don't overthink it, right? If you're out and about in the community, just say hello. You'll be surprised, say something, and that's what I've learned to do. And every time I've done it, I feel better. Now, you might get a funny reaction, and I don't take it personal. I when I'm out and about and I talk to people or I attempt to talk to people, I look at it like petting a dog. You get one of three reactions, right? The dog either licks your hand and wags its tail, and it's wants to jump all over you in a good way, right? And that means they want to. It's like a golden retriever, right? Or the other is you sort of you go to pet the dog and the Doberman picture, if you will, and they're like, "Arr," and okay, that's it. I'm gone, or the third being kind of more like a cat, maybe, right? Cats don't typically care. They're in their own world. It's like, and you can talk to somebody and they just sort of walk away. They don't care. It's like, it's not like, they just don't ignore you. And the funny thing is, I'll give you a quick story on that note. So I was, again, I think we've talked about this before, but I have a goal every day, especially before COVID, where I'm out and about. Now the goal shifted to more social media based, but to meet three total strangers every day and make friends with them and get their contact information, exchange contact information with no agenda. So I remember, I had my goal and I wanted it done. And so I I said hello to somebody and they kind of like almost ignored me. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I didn't say loud enough. So I kind of strategically walked my way around and sort of got in front of them and said it again or said something or whatever. And then the person said to me, no habla inglés, so he didn't speak English, right? So it wasn't like me. It wasn't that, I did something wrong. It's just the person who didn't speak English, and it might've been another language. I can't remember, but the point is that you just go out and you just take a step, just try it. If you try it, you might like it, maybe every day, make a goal to say hello to 5 people. If you're out and about, if you're out, out of the COVID lockdown, say hello to 5 people. Just say hello. That's it. If you're maybe, you want to do something on social media, message 5 people and ask to jump on a call. I don't know. Just do something different and try something. And yeah, I mean, there's no magic bullet here. You got to believe that it's going to be good, and you got to believe that there's something good going to come of it. And I'm telling you, it has for me. And just try it.
Oh yeah, and it's a shift for some folks, right? But especially on a platform like LinkedIn. I mean, that's the perfect spot of people being open to that network side of things. And sure, there's a ton of spam going in your your DMs and all of that. But if you're really wanting some practice, heck, connect with those folks too, right? Hop on a call with them, sell them something when they're trying to sell you something. But there is, I know when you and I connected too, it was, I think, through Michelle Hecht that first introduced me to you and Cameron. And that's one thing that we discussed then, is that we're those folks who are just like, hey, so-and-so says we should talk. So we're going to talk. Okay. Like, there's just not a question, right? And when you can do that, and I think that's a really easy, attainable goal for folks, of even just think of it that way, in terms of, hey, you're gonna reach out to 3 people already in your network. There's already a connection there, that you're in this same little world, and you just want to expand and get to know more people. And like so many things, whether it's sales or anything else, it's doing the reps, it's having those conversations. And
that's right.
And then, back full circle to what you talk about so much, is connecting authentically. When you show up to that conversation in an authentic way of just like, honestly, I'm horrible at this. Like, I want to be better at it. I would love to connect and have a conversation, and just, drop all the pretense and just show up that way from the very beginning. You'll be amazed at the amount of people who are just like, oh, that's awesome. I love it. That's, and then you can dig in, right?
So true. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I'm reading, rereading the book or re-listening to the book, The Go-Giver Leader, and in the book, the one of the characters, I think it's Aunt L, who happened to have a very great she was supposed to be a very successful entrepreneur and had a speaking career as well. And she said that she was in the very beginning, especially extremely nervous in front of her audience. And she said what she did was when she started first speech, it bombed. She was so nervous, it bombed. And then she made a decision she's going to not do that, and she decided I'm just going to tell the audience, listen, I just want to let you know I'm super nervous. And she made a joke about it. I forget what she said. She said something like, I'm so nervous I'm actually gonna close my eyes during this speech or something like that. And the audience laughed or something. I'm probably botching this, but the point is that the audience was like, they were like her biggest cheerleader because she was vulnerable, she admitted, and now she's comfortable, the audience is comfortable. Just come as you are. And the other thing I like to speak about when I speak about the topic of going from inward focused, self-focused to others focused is, listen, you gotta start to believe you're you're valuable, and you are, right? You gotta make sure you've convinced yourself of that. You gotta, and some of that's going to be, maybe some self-development, some personal development. It's going to be some self-reflection. But I like to believe, and I'm not saying this in an arrogant way, Jason, but when I enter the room, when I get to speak to somebody, and it's a privilege, I acknowledge the privilege. I like to believe I'm adding value in their life. I'm bringing something to the table. When I'm in the conversation, I'm in the room, I like to think the room's better. And again, I'm saying that not to sound arrogant, but I want whoever's listening to this to think about that and convince yourself, not in a false, egotistical way, but just believe you've got value. You got to believe that you can, you're bringing something to the table, whether it's your experience, whether it's your perspective, whatever, right? So if you can believe that, now you can, once you kind of resolve in yourself that I'm okay, which took me it took me a long time, real long time, Jason, to get to a place in my life where I really felt I was okay. But once it got, and my hope and prayer to everyone listening to this is don't take as long as it took me. But once you get there, now you can go into conversations and be real and be authentic and not have to worry about, wow, if they find out about me, oh, because I was the guy, and there's a great book called Mindset. It talks about growth mindset and fixed mindset, right? So it's those two things. And I was more of the fixed mindset guy. Fixed mindset being I didn't want to make mistakes, I didn't want to be ridiculed, and I've learned to grow into more of a growth mindset so that it's okay to fail. It's okay to show your weakness, right? Because back again, it goes back to my formative years as a kid, learning disabled and picked on and all that. The ridicule kind of shaped the fact that I didn't want to have to be in that type of situation again. But I've learned to get over that. And once I've gotten over that, now I can actually go and enjoy conversations, be a blessing to people.
Yeah, and it's not a matter of some phony try to convince yourself. It's a matter of focus, because I can just about guarantee you, to your point, Steve, that everyone listening, if they will focus on them, they have the things that they've been successful at, however small or giant. And so much of the time, it is difficult for us to get to that place of feeling worthy, because we're constantly looking for what we want to become or want to do, or the other person and this. And when we take that focus and shift it to, oh yeah, I guess I have done that. I guess I've done that pretty well. Okay, well, okay, I can I can hold my head up a little bit higher, and walk in the room. And if you're somewhere and you have a seat at the table, you're walking into that room, or heck, especially if you've been asked to speak, there's a reason you're there, and like focus on that part of it. And then when you combine that with that realness with who you're in front of, and when you are feeling nervous, just like, sorry, I am always nervous at these things, like, and you just kind of let that out. We can all sit there and think about those folks we've listened to and been in the audience for who have done that, and we're like, oh man, I love that. Like that's where the bond is formed. And again, I think it's a weird thing for folks to think about, the people who don't think about this stuff all the time, right? Who don't think about how can I communicate better, how can I listen better, how can I do, they don't think about this stuff all the time. And it may seem foreign to go, like it may be like another language, to be purposeful with stuff that should just be human stuff, right? That's like saying, we should just be good at relationships just because we're born. And no, they take work, and there's skill sets, and there's things that you have to learn about and practice and do. And that's why I like to keep this at the forefront of conversation with folks, because it is so rewarding so quickly. You talk about, it's an interesting dynamic, right? Like being outward focused and not inward focused, but it's a constant dance, right? It's finding that, because when you can focus on others, focus on even the way you put it, I have value to give to others in this room. That's a really great distinction, because I'm thinking about others, but I'm confident enough in myself to know that I have something to help them, right? But being inward focused enough to realize your strengths, your weaknesses, where you need to grow, what you need to do. And now when it comes time for action, okay, who can I help? Like where can I focus some of this attention? So it's an interesting dance that is constantly going on, I think.
Well, I as you're speaking, I'm thinking, okay, let me think back to the Steve from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago, right? And I maybe this relates to some of your listenership, but I think there's a part of people listening to this, saying to themselves, yeah, but I don't have a lot, like I don't read a lot of books, or I'm not super smart, or I'm not, and whatever you're saying, whatever talk. By the way, you could reprogram that. I'm reading, just re-listen to a book called Soundtracks, great book, highly recommend it. I'm reprogramming your brain.
John Acuff's, right?
Yes, John Acuff.
Yeah.
Just fortunate that he just reconnected with me on LinkedIn. I'm hoping to try to get him on our show. We'll see. But anyway, but yeah. So you could continue program, but what I want to say is this: if you just go into conversations asking, genuinely interested in asking questions and asking about the person, and you don't have to be an expert on tennis. Okay, maybe that's a topic they like to talk about. Well, by the way, just keep asking questions about tennis, and just keep asking them. Number one, you're going to learn about tennis. So maybe the next time you are in a conversation, you'll know some things you could say. But more than that, what I've learned, and I've read it in, probably the dozens of books. I think the one I read the most, it was on how to win friends and influence people, where afterwards the person said, I think he wound up saying, I don't know, maybe about 2 minutes worth of stuff. And the person he was speaking with was 98 minutes. And at the end, he heard feedback. Well, that gentleman was the best conversationalist I've ever spoken to. Meanwhile, he said two things, 2 minutes worth of stuff, because he was genuinely interested. He was a listener. And so you could be authentic. You can be engaging. You could add value, because let's be honest, people want to be able to be heard. They want to know people want to hear their story. So don't feel like you have to be great. Know you're great. But don't feel like you have to have all the stuff inside of you. And by the way, if you want to work on that, remember, it's hard to pour out of your glass until your glass is full. So keep filling your glass, right, with good stuff in, right? Positive, good books, good podcasts and audios. Make sure you're listening to Jason and subscribe to his channel, and make sure you're getting that. And feel free to come on ours. The Master Connector .show is our website. But get good stuff in. But in the meanwhile, understand that if you ask enough questions and you're genuinely interested in somebody else, that's going to be enough for them to feel valued, and for you to feel you'll be connected. And again, they may ask you a little about you. That's okay. answer it as much as you want or as little as you want, and go back to them again. Right?
Yeah. And I want people to take this point really strongly, because this isn't tactic time. This isn't just like, oh, okay, well, if I want to be seen as awesome, I'm going to listen to, like, I hope that people really take this in as it takes the pressure off that it was intended, which is exactly what you're bringing up. Like, it's not all on your shoulders, right? And I think Jay Abraham tells a similar story of, middle of the night, meeting some guy in the bar, and, he says nothing the entire time, and then the next deal he wants to do a business deal with Jay because he's just the greatest in the world, because he was just there listening. But it also speaks to how rare that is, how rarely people actually are sitting across from somebody who wants to listen and will actually make them feel heard. To your point, it's it's a sad state, but take it for the positive that it is that it allows you to stand out really quickly.
Yeah, there's no doubt. People are hungry for that. They really want that, and if you fill that need, you'll be amazed.
Yeah, this is awesome. I appreciate you being on and digging through here and bringing your expertise to this topic. I love it so much. I'm so passionate about connecting other people, connecting with people, all that good stuff. How can people reach out to you, and best way to find you and everything?
Sure. Easiest is stevespiro.com. I've got a digital business card online, stevespiro.com, Spiro, obviously. And I also, if they're interested in having me as a speaker, they can go to spiro-global.com. And it's also a clickable link on the stevespiro.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Obviously, that's my social media of choice. But those are probably the easiest ways to go. But yeah, if you're listening, I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to see how it can be of value to you and be a blessing to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve.
This is a privilege. I appreciate Jason. It's a great honor and privilege to be on with you.
Absolutely. We'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this show. If you ever need help building out custom strategies for your business or deciding what actions to take next, head over to MediaLeadsCo.com and let's connect. I'll talk to you soon on the next Strategy and Action.